A dragon's roar once shook the foundations of ancient castles. From the deepest forests to the highest mountain peaks, every culture on Earth has told tales of impossible creatures. This is a journey through 30 of history's most unbelievable stories of mythical monsters. We will travel across continents and centuries, from the fire-breathing serpents of Europe to the shape-shifting tricksters of Japan, exploring legends that have haunted and fascinated humanity for generations. By the end, you will understand not just the stories, but the hidden truths and real-world fears that may have inspired them. We will examine fossils mistaken for dragon bones and ask if sailors' tales of colossal sea beasts could have a basis in biology. What common thread connects a vampire's curse to a giant bird that creates thunder? Prepare for an adventurous dive into the lore, the historical context, and the enduring mysteries that make these monsters linger in our imagination. What legendary beast from your own part of the world sends a chill down your spine? Our first tale begins with a creature so deeply embedded in our collective story that its shadow stretches across the entire map of Europe. The dragon is not one monster, but many, its form shifting with the landscape and the fears of the people who described it. In the misty highlands and deep caves of Anglo-Saxon and Norse lands, the dragon was often a wyvern, a fearsome, winged beast with 2 legs and a barbed tail. This was a creature of pure, avaricious instinct, coiled upon a hoard of stolen gold and jewels in a dark barrow mound, breathing fire upon any knight foolish enough to challenge it. Its defeat was a hero's ultimate trial, a battle against greed and chaos made flesh. Yet travel east into the forests and mountains of Slavic folklore, and the dragon's nature changes. Here you might encounter Zime Goranich, a 3-headed serpent of immense power, or a wise, ancient dragon that could speak in riddles and control the elements. These beings were less about mindless hoarding and more about representing the immense, untamable power of nature itself. They were forces to be bargained with or outsmarted as much as they were forces to be fought. So where did such a pervasive and detailed idea come from? One compelling theory points directly to the ground beneath our feet. For centuries, farmers plowing their fields and miners digging into hillsides would uncover enormous, strange bones. Without the concept of dinosaurs, which is a surprisingly modern scientific understanding, what else could these gigantic remains be but the skeletons of dragons? A mammoth's femur, the skull of a prehistoric rhinoceros, or the jagged tooth of a megalodon shark, all became tangible proof that these legendary beasts once lived and died in the ancient past. The dragon was not just a story, it was a fossil waiting to be found. This physical evidence fused with the creature's powerful symbolic role. Across cultures, the dragon represented the ultimate challenge, the unconquered wilderness, the deadly sin of greed, or the chaotic enemy of order. To slay a dragon was to assert humanity's courage, faith, or ingenuity over the primal unknown. It is a story we have told ourselves for millennia, a narrative where the finding of giant bones in the dirt confirmed our greatest myths. What other ancient discoveries do you think were explained through the lens of a monster? While dragons were born from bones in the earth, another monster was carved from the living rock itself, a silent guardian on the edge of a vast desert. The Great Sphinx of Giza is not merely a statue, it is the monumental embodiment of a mythical idea, a creature whose true purpose has been shrouded in sand and speculation for thousands of years. To the ancient Greeks, the Sphinx was a terrifying female monster with the head of a woman, the body of a lion, the wings of an eagle, and a cruel intellect. She famously besieged the city of Thebes, posing a deadly riddle to all who passed. What creature, she asked, walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs at noon, and 3 legs in the evening? The answer, as the hero Oedipus famously deduced, was a human who crawls as a baby, walks upright in adulthood, and uses a cane in old age. Defeated by the solution, the Theban Sphinx destroyed herself, a story that speaks to the power of human reason over bestial mystery. But this winged riddler is a foreign import. The original Egyptian Sphinx was something entirely different and far more profound. In its homeland, the Sphinx was a guardian deity, a symbol of immense royal power and divine protection. It combined the immense physical strength of a lion, the king of beasts, with the intelligence and authority of a pharaoh, whose likeness was often carved for its head. This fusion created a perfect symbol of the ruler's duty, to wield fierce strength with enlightened wisdom, protecting the kingdom and the cosmic order. Some sphinxes, like the Great Avenue at Karnak, even bore the head of a ram, connecting them to the god Amun-Ra, the supreme sun god. They were not monsters to be slain, but sacred protectors of temples, tombs, and pathways, their stone gaze meant to ward off chaos for eternity. This brings us to the modern mysteries that swirl around the most famous sphinx of all. The Great Sphinx at Giza, with its missing nose and weathered body, is traditionally dated to the reign of Pharaoh Khafre, around 2,500 years before the Common Era. Yet, its severe erosion patterns have led some geologists and alternative historians to propose a far more radical idea. They suggest the water erosion on the Sphinx's body and enclosure wall could only have been caused by extensive rainfall, pointing to a time when the Sahara was not a desert but a savanna. This would push its construction back thousands of years earlier, to perhaps 8 or even 10,000 years before the Common Era, to a pre-pharaonic epoch lost to history. This theory fuels speculation about hidden chambers. Using seismic surveys and ground-penetrating radar, researchers have detected anomalies, possible cavities or tunnels beneath the Sphinx's pores and alongside its body. Could these be natural geological features, or might they be man-made rooms sealed for millennia? The most tantalizing legend speaks of a hall of records, a hidden library said to contain the lost knowledge of a sophisticated precursor civilization, perhaps even Atlantis. While mainstream archaeology remains skeptical, the very possibility ignites the imagination. The Sphinx, then, is a dual mystery, a guardian of both a pharaoh's tomb and humanity's deepest questions about our own past. It stands as a silent sentinel whose original name is forgotten, whose creator's full intent is unknown, and whose underground secrets, if any exist, remain patiently waiting in the dark. From the silent, sun-baked guardian of the desert, we plunge into the cold, churning chaos of the North Atlantic. Here, beneath steel-gray skies and towering waves, Viking longships were not just challenged by storms, but by a living nightmare rising from the abyss. The kraken was not merely a large sea creature, it was a mobile catastrophe. Norse sagas and sailors' logs describe a beast of such impossible scale that its body could be mistaken for a chain of small, rocky islands. When a crew, desperate for respite, attempted to land on this false shore, the monster would submerge, creating a whirlpool that swallowed ship and men whole. Some accounts gave it the form of a colossal crab, with claws capable of snapping a warship's mast. But the most enduring image is that of a gargantuan cephalopod, with serpentine arms thicker than a man, covered in suckers the size of dinner plates, and eyes that glowed like malevolent lanterns in the deep gloom. Its purpose in the myths was absolute and simple, to embody the ocean's ultimate, mindless fury. The legend was codified not just in tavern tales, but in serious naturalist texts. In the 18th century, the Danish historian and Bishop Erik Pontoppidan included detailed accounts of the kraken in his Natural History of Norway, describing its habit of stirring up nutritious mud from the seafloor, which attracted schools of fish, creating a deceptively rich fishing ground that would vanish when the beast awoke. This gave the monster a strange, ecological logic within the sailor's world. The terrifying truth behind the myth likely surfaces in rare, frantic encounters with the real giants of the deep. The giant squid, Architeuthis dux, is a creature of profound mystery, living at depths where sunlight never reaches. For centuries, the only evidence of its existence were bodies that occasionally washed ashore, mangled and strange, or found in the stomachs of sperm whales. A sailor who glimpsed the thrashing, pale arm of a 20-foot-long squid breaching the stormy surface in a tangle of rigging would have no scientific framework to understand it. In that moment of terror, with the ship heaving and the wind screaming, that single arm became part of a creature large enough to drag them all to a watery grave. The kraken was the perfect explanation for the unknown horrors of the deep sea, a place more alien and inaccessible than the moon. Its cultural tentacles have gripped our imagination ever since, inspiring generations of pirate lore, appearing in Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and fueling countless modern films where it remains the quintessential sea monster. The kraken proves that sometimes reality provides just enough of a glimpse to let our deepest fears write the rest of the story. Far from the ocean's formless terror, another kind of monster thrives within the intricate rules of society and the human heart. In the misty forests and bustling towns of Japan, the most dangerous creature might be the most beautiful woman at the feast. The kitsune, the magical fox of Japanese folklore, is a being of profound intelligence and layered morality, a shapeshifter whose true nature is as fluid as its form. Unlike the brute force of a dragon or the mindless hunger of a kraken, the kitsune's power lies in deception, wisdom, and a deep connection to the spiritual world. These foxes are not born monsters, but beings who grow in power and wisdom as they age, gaining an additional tail for every century they live, with the most venerable, the nine-tailed foxes, attaining near divine knowledge. Their most famous trick is shape-shifting, most commonly into stunningly beautiful women. A traveler might meet a gentle, lonely maiden by a moonlit road, only to discover years later that his loving wife vanishes on certain nights or leaves telltale traces of her fox nature, like a tail glimpsed beneath her kimono. This transformation is not merely a disguise, it is a central theme in countless tales that explore the tension between appearance and reality and the fragility of human trust. The very identity of the kitsune is split, reflecting a dual view of the supernatural. The Zenko, or celestial foxes, are benevolent servants of the Shinto deity Inari, the god of rice, fertility, and worldly success. These good foxes act as divine messengers and protectors, their stone statues often seen guarding Inari shrines, a red bib tied around their necks. They bring prosperity and ward off evil, representing the positive, orderly side of spiritual power. In stark contrast are the Nojitsune, the wild foxes. Unbound to any deity, they are tricksters, driven by mischief, malice, or a strange sense of poetic justice. A Nojitsune might lead an arrogant samurai in circles all night, create phantom sounds and lights to confuse a woodcutter, or ruin a merchant's reputation through clever forgeries and lies. Their tricks range from playful to devastating, often punishing human pride, greed, or broken promises. The kitsune's magic manifests in eerie, beautiful ways. They are said to create kitsunbai, or foxfire, ghostly flames that float over fields and graveyards, sometimes in a processional line, mimicking a noble wedding parade to lead the unwary astray. Their power can even cross the boundary of the human body in the phenomenon of kitsune tsuki, or fox possession. Victims, typically young women, were believed to be invaded by a fox spirit, causing them to speak in strange voices, crave specific foods, or display knowledge they should not have. Exorcisms were performed to drive the spirit out, a practice that blurred the lines between spiritual belief, mental illness, and social control. At their core, these stories of marriage, magic, and possession are profound explorations of human anxiety. They ask how we can ever truly know another person. They warn of the dangers hidden behind captivating beauty, and they give form to the fear of losing control of one's own mind and soul. The kitsune is a mirror reflecting our deepest uncertainties about trust, identity, and the unseen forces that might be shaping our lives. a monster for the modern age was born not in ancient texts but in the headlines of local newspapers. In the mid-1990s, a wave of fear swept through the rural communities of Puerto Rico. Farmers were waking to find their goats, chickens, and other livestock dead in their pens, not mauled or eaten, but eerily drained of blood through small, precise puncture wounds in the neck. The killer left no clear tracks, and the method was too strange for any known predator. Panicked witnesses began describing a creature that matched the grim efficiency of the attacks, a being they named the chupacabra, which translates directly to goat sucker. The early descriptions were vividly terrifying, a creature seemingly assembled from a nightmare of science fiction. It was said to be roughly the size of a small bear, standing on two powerful hind legs like a reptilian kangaroo. Its skin was leathery and gray-green. Its eyes glowed an ominous red, and most strikingly, a line of sharp quills or spines ran down the length of its back. This was not a natural animal. It was a phantom of the late 20th century, a monster for an era of UFO sightings and secret government labs. As the legend spread like wildfire from Puerto Rico across Latin America and into the southern United States, the chupacabra's appearance began to mutate in the telling. The bipedal reptile slowly transformed into a different kind of horror, one that felt closer to home yet just as alien. The dominant image became that of a hairless, canine-like beast. It was often described as the size of a large dog or coyote, but completely devoid of fur, with leathery blue-gray skin, pronounced back haunches, and a pronounced spinal ridge. This version was less like a visitor from another planet and more like a familiar animal grotesquely diseased, which provided a critical clue to a potential scientific explanation. Wildlife biologists and veterinarians began to notice a striking similarity between these descriptions and animals suffering from a severe case of mange, particularly sarcoptic mange. This parasitic skin disease causes intense itching, leading animals to lose all their hair. The resulting emaciation, coupled with scabby, thickened skin and a hunched posture from weakness, can make a common coyote or dog look like an otherworldly creature, especially under the stress and poor lighting of a nighttime encounter. A sick, disoriented predator attacking livestock in an uncharacteristic way could easily seed the legend of something entirely new. This biological explanation is compelling, but the cultural explosion of the chupacabra speaks to deeper needs. The phenomenon arrived at a perfect storm of societal anxiety. The 1990s were a time of burgeoning internet connectivity, where local folklore could go global in an instant, blending with existing fears about government secrecy and extraterrestrial activity. The chupacabra became a blank screen onto which people could project a multitude of modern worries. For some, it was an escaped genetic experiment from a clandestine laboratory. For others, it was the pet of a stranded alien or a creature summoned by toxic pollution. Its blood-drinking habit connected it to older vampire myths, but its method was clinical, almost surgical, reflecting a fear of cold, impersonal technology. The legend spread because it was adaptable, a monster that could be whatever a community needed it to be, a tangible explanation for unexplained livestock deaths and a symbol of unease about a rapidly changing world. It proved that the human mind, even in the age of science and satellites, still has a powerful urge to fill the shadows with a shape, to give a name to the thing that goes bump in the night. High on windswept mountain peaks, far from the reach of ordinary men, a different kind of guardian kept its watch. The griffin, a majestic fusion of the eagle and the lion, was a creature of pure, noble power in the ancient imagination. By combining the king of birds, ruler of the sky, with the king of beasts, master of the earth, the Greeks created the ultimate symbol of divine authority and vigilant protection. These were not monsters to be slain, but magnificent allies of the gods. Ancient writers like Herodotus placed them in the remote, gold-rich mountains of Scythia, where they were said to fiercely guard hoards of the precious metal from human prospectors, battling one-eyed Arimaspian horsemen in an eternal, mythical conflict. This role as a guardian made the griffin a perfect emblem for the sacred and the powerful. Their images adorned temples and palaces, and they were famously hitched to the chariot of the sun god Apollo, representing the union of intelligence and strength needed to pull the sun across the sky. This legacy of majesty transitioned seamlessly into the medieval world, where the griffin became a staple of heraldry. Emblazoned on shields, banners, and crests, it signified the very virtues of a perfect ruler, military courage paired with sharp-sighted wisdom and unwavering guardianship over their realm. The griffin's power was open, solar, and honorable, a force aligned with order and celestial will. From the sunlit heights, we descend to the shadowy, treacherous coastline where temptation wore a beautiful voice. The sirens of Greek myth presented a danger of an entirely different nature. In their earliest depictions, like in Homer's Odyssey, they were not the mermaids of later tales, but creatures with the bodies of birds and the heads of women, perched on rocky islands surrounded by the bleached bones of shipwrecked sailors. Their weapon was not claw or fang, but an enchantment of sound, a song of such unbearable sweetness and promised knowledge that it compelled men to steer their ships toward the jagged rocks, abandoning all reason and duty for the promise of the melody. To hear the siren's song was to be offered everything you desired to know, but the price was your life. Odysseus, forewarned by the sorceress Circe, had his crew plug their ears with beeswax and lashed himself to the mast of his ship to experience the song without being able to act on its lethal pull, a powerful allegory for resisting temptation through forethought and restraint. Over centuries, the siren's form evolved. The bird woman slowly transformed, her avian features melting away, leaving the familiar figure of the beautiful mermaid, a hybrid of woman and fish, but the core danger remained the same. This shift from sky to sea deepened their symbolism, tying them directly to the ocean's dual nature, a source of life and a bringer of death. Psychologically, the siren is one of our most enduring metaphors. She represents any alluring desire that leads to destruction, the call of something that promises fulfillment but delivers ruin. This could be the seduction of power, the obsession with a forbidden love, or the addictive pull of a vice that seems beautiful until it shatters you on the rocks. The griffin guards a physical treasure, but the siren guards nothing. She is the false treasure herself, a phantom of pleasure that masks a fatal end. Where the griffin symbolizes the strength found in noble guardianship, the siren reveals the profound vulnerability within the human heart, the part of us that can be led astray by the mere promise of a song. The siren's song speaks to a longing for something beyond our world, but what if the spirits we must appease are not in distant seas, but in the very walls of our home and the trees outside our door? Slavic folklore presents a universe brimming with unseen life, where every home and every forest has its own resident spirit, each with a distinct personality and purpose. Two of the most pivotal are the Leshy and the Domovoi, beings that perfectly embody the ancient balance between the untamed wild and the safety of the hearth. The Leshy is the soul of the forest made manifest. He is a shape-shifting giant, a trickster guardian whose very form reflects the woods he protects. He might appear as a towering old man with a long green beard made of moss and leaves, with bark for skin and roots for feet. In the next moment, he could shrink to the size of a mouse or take on the shape of a beloved family member, all to disorient and test those who enter his domain. His primary role was not evil but ecological. He protected the animals and plants, punishing hunters who took more than they needed or woodcutters who showed disrespect. To cross a Leshy was to risk being led in endless circles, a victim of his enchantment until you turned your clothes inside out or put your shoes on the wrong feet, traditional tricks to break his spell. Travelers knew to leave offerings, a piece of bread, a few coins, or a respectful greeting to ensure safe passage, acknowledging his sovereignty over the natural world. If the Leshy ruled the chaotic, living wild, the Domovoi was the master of the ordered human home. This household spirit lived in the warmest, most fundamental part of the dwelling, behind the brick stove or in the shadowy cellar. A domovoi was considered a cherished, if demanding, member of the family. He was a helpful guardian, a nocturnal protector who would warn of impending danger by tugging on a sleeping person's hair, groaning in the night, or making the family dog bark. He watched over the livestock, ensured the bread rose properly, and brought general good fortune. But his nature was profoundly dual. Treat him with respect, leave out a bowl of porridge, speak to him kindly, keep a clean house, and he was a benevolent force. Disrespect him, however, and the domovoi transformed into a vengeful poltergeist. He would pinch people black and blue in their sleep, hide essential tools, break dishes, sour the milk, and make the livestock sick. His anger was a direct reflection of household discord or neglect. When a family moved, they would perform rituals to invite their domovoi to come with them, often carrying a burning log from the old stove to the new one, symbolically transferring the spirits home. These tales are far more than simple ghost stories. They represent a complete worldview, an animistic understanding that the world is alive with consciousness. The Leshy and the domovoi taught practical ethics, enforcing rules of environmental stewardship and domestic harmony. They made the vast, impersonal forces of nature and fortune feel personal and negotiable. In a world without scientific explanations for a lost path or a sudden illness, these spirits provided both a cause and a solution, a way to interact with the unseen currents of life through ritual, respect, and a keen awareness of one's place within a living, spirit-filled world. The spirits of hearth and forest teach us to live in balance with the world around us, but some myths reach for something far grander, touching the very cycles of life and the raw power of the sky. Our next two tales soar high above the earthly realm, featuring majestic birds whose stories are woven into the fundamental forces of the universe. We begin in the ancient Mediterranean with the phoenix, a creature of breathtaking beauty and profound symbolism. Its legend is one of perfect, solitary renewal. Most famously recorded by the Greek historian Herodotus, the phoenix was said to live for 500 years. As its long life drew to a close, it would build a nest of aromatic spices like cinnamon and myrrh in a high, sun-drenched place. Then, as the first rays of dawn touched it, the bird would burst into flame, consumed entirely by a fire of its own making. From the ashes, a new, young phoenix would emerge, ready to begin the cycle anew. This powerful image of resurrection did not belong to Greece alone. Its roots stretch back to Egypt, where a similar heron-like bird called the Bennu was associated with the sun god Ra and the annual flooding of the Nile, which brought life back to the parched land. The phoenix became a universal symbol, not of death, but of eternal return, of the sun setting and rising, of empires falling and new ones being born from their legacy. It represents hope that is literally forged in fire, the idea that endings are necessary for glorious new beginnings. Across the Atlantic, another colossal bird commanded the heavens, but its power was not quiet rebirth, it was a celestial storm. The thunderbird is a central figure in the spiritual traditions of many indigenous peoples across North America, from the Lakota on the plains to the Kwakwaka'wakwa of the Pacific Northwest. This was no mere animal, but a tremendous spirit being of immense importance. Its size was beyond comprehension, with wingspans said to blot out the sun. The simple act of its flying was what created the rolling booms of thunder across the landscape, while the flash of its eyes or the beating of its wings against the clouds produced brilliant forks of lightning. In many stories, the thunderbird served as a powerful protector of humanity, engaged in an eternal struggle with great horned serpents or water monsters that lived in deep lakes and rivers, creatures that represented chaos and flooding. By battling these serpents, the thunderbird controlled the rains and ensured the balance of the world, bringing life-giving water without destructive deluge. It was the embodiment of the sky's awesome power, a reminder of a force that could nourish or devastate, demanding respect and reverence. Placed side by side, these two avian titans offer a fascinating contrast in how cultures mythologize supreme power. The phoenix is a deeply personal, cyclical metaphor. Its fire is transformative and internal, a story about the soul's journey, about legacy, and the beautiful inevitability of renewal after a period of destruction. The Thunderbird's narrative is communal and environmental. Its power is external and immediate, shaping the weather, the water, and the very safety of the land for all people. One is a symbol of time and perseverance, the other a ruler of space and elemental force. Both, however, speak to the human desire to find majestic, feathered forms for the most fundamental and awe-inspiring processes of our world, from the promise of a new day to the terrifying gift of a summer storm. From majestic birds of rebirth and thunder, we descend into a realm of more intimate, paralyzing terror, where a single glance could end your life. Two of mythology's most feared reptilian monsters, Medusa and the basilisk, shared this deadly power, yet their stories unfold from profoundly different origins. Medusa's tale is one of profound tragedy and divine injustice. Unlike her immortal Gorgon sisters, Esthino and Uriel, Medusa was born mortal and, according to the poet Ovid, was once a stunningly beautiful priestess serving in the temple of Athena. Her crime was to be desired by the sea god Poseidon, who assaulted her within the goddess's sacred precinct. In a devastating act of misplaced wrath, Athena punished not the god but the victim. She transformed Medusa's lovely hair into a hissing nest of venomous snakes and cursed her with a gaze that turned any living creature to stone. Exiled to a remote cave, the once beautiful woman became a monster, her very face a weapon of instant petrification. Her end came at the hands of the hero Perseus, who, aided by gifts from the gods, used a mirrored shield to avoid her direct gaze, beheading her while she slept. Even in death, her power remained, as Perseus wielded her severed head as a weapon, later offering it to Athena, who placed it upon her aegis, a protective shield. Medusa's story is layered with symbolism. She is a victim transformed into a monster, her petrifying gaze a metaphor for the paralyzing effects of trauma and the terrifying power of female rage when cornered and cursed. Her face, known as the Gorgonean, became an ancient apotropaic symbol, meant to ward off evil by confronting it with a greater horror. The basilisk, however, was born from unnatural corruption. Hailed in medieval bestiaries as the king of serpents, its very origin was an abomination. It was said to hatch from a spherical, yolkless egg laid by a 7-year-old rooster and incubated in dung by a toad. This creature was pure, concentrated malice. Its mere breath could wither plants and poison the air, and its gaze was as lethal as Medusa's, capable of killing instantly or, in some accounts, turning victims to stone. It left a trail of blight wherever it crawled, yet for all its dreadful power, the basilisk was defeated by absurdly humble means. Legends held it was vulnerable to the scent of a weasel, which could enter its lair and kill it, and most famously, it could be destroyed by its own reflection. The sight of its own terrifying face was said to be so shocking it would cause the creature to burst apart or turn to stone itself. This weakness made it a potent allegory for the self-destructive nature of evil and pride. Both monsters represent the ultimate, inescapable terror, a threat that can destroy you without ever touching you. But where Medusa's power stems from a personal curse and tragic violation, making her a figure of pity as much as fear, the basilisk is a symbol of innate, corrupting evil, a plague upon the natural world born from a perversion of the natural order. One is a corrupted human, the other a monstrous accident, yet both remind us that in the ancient world, the greatest dangers were not always those you could fight with a sword, but those you dared not even look upon. The gaze of a monster can turn a hero to stone, but the power of a story can shape the very world. Two figures from very different traditions, Anansi the spider and the golem of clay, embody this profound truth, showing how cunning and creation can be tools for survival. First, from the rich oral traditions of West Africa and the Caribbean comes Anansi. He is most often depicted as a spider, a small, seemingly insignificant creature, yet he is a trickster god of immense importance. Anansi never wins through brute strength, but through a brilliant, inventive mind. In countless tales, he outsmarts larger, more powerful animals like elephant or leopard, using flattery, clever bargains, and ingenious traps to get what he wants. His exploits are not just for personal gain, they are foundational. One of the most famous stories tells how Anansi, through a series of deceptions, managed to capture all the world's stories which had been hoarded by the sky god Niame. By completing a series of impossible tasks, often by tricking other creatures into doing the work for him, Anansi won the right to own and distribute these stories to humanity. In this way, the spider is credited with bringing narrative itself to the world, making him a cultural hero who represents the power of wit, language, and intelligence over raw power. His tales taught lessons about resourcefulness, the consequences of greed, and the importance of thinking several steps ahead. Anansi proves that the smallest being, armed with a sharp mind, can change the fate of everyone. From the nimble, living story of a spider, we turn to a creature born from silent earth and sacred word. The golem, a being from Jewish mysticism, is a figure of protection and profound caution. The most famous narrative comes from 16th century Prague, where Rabbi Judah Loew ben Bezalel is said to have created a golem to defend the city's Jewish community from violent pogroms and blood libel accusations. The process was a solemn, holy act. The rabbi and his assistants shaped a giant figure from the clay of the riverbank, then brought it to life by inscribing the Hebrew word for truth, emet, on its forehead, or by placing a shem, a parchment with God's name, in its mouth. This was not a whimsical trick, but a desperate act of communal defense. The golem was immensely strong, mindlessly obedient and tireless, patrolling the ghetto walls and performing heavy labor to keep the people safe. It was the perfect protector, a being of pure function, but the story never ends with a simple victory. The golem's power, devoid of a soul or independent reason, carried a terrifying potential. In some versions of the tale, the creature begins to follow its orders too literally, or its strength becomes uncontrollable, threatening the very people it was made to protect. To deactivate it, the rabbi must erase the first letter of the word on its forehead, changing emet, truth, to met, meaning death. The clay giant then crumbles back into inert dust. This conclusion is the story's core warning. The golem is a parable about the responsibilities of creation and the peril of power without wisdom or compassion. It asks a timeless question: what happens when a tool we build to save us grows beyond our ability to control it? Anansi and the golem, though one is a nimble trickster and the other a solemn guardian, both speak to the human need to shape our destiny. One uses stories as his tool, the other becomes a tool in a story about survival, each reminding us that the things we bring into the world, whether tales or clay giants, carry immense weight and consequence. The mountains themselves seem to breathe with a life of their own, and high among the world's most formidable peaks, the local people have long known one of its most secretive inhabitants. The Yeti, known in Sherpa tradition as the Migoi or wild man of the snows, is not a monster of folklore, but a respected, if elusive, part of the Himalayan ecology. For generations, the Sherpa and other Himalayan communities have spoken of a large, powerfully built, bipedal creature covered in reddish-brown or dark gray hair, standing well over 6 feet tall. It is described as immensely strong, with a pungent odor, and is said to inhabit the remote, high-altitude valleys and forests just below the permanent snowline. In these stories, the Yeti is a real animal, a rare and reclusive primate, and its presence is treated with a mix of caution and reverence, a part of the mountain's natural order that commands respect from those who traverse its domain. The legend entered Western consciousness in the early 20th century, fueled by returning mountaineers who brought back tales of mysterious, human-like footprints discovered in pristine snow at altitudes where no human could reasonably survive. The most famous of these tracks were photographed during Eric Shipton's 1951 expedition on the Menlung Glacier near Everest. The images showed a clear, large print with a distinct, opposable-looking big toe, a detail that sparked intense debate and captured the global imagination, earning the creature its sensational Western nickname, the Abominable Snowman. This visual evidence, however blurry, was compelling. It suggested a physical being, a missing link perhaps, roaming the planet's last unexplored wilderness. The hunt for proof intensified. Expeditions were launched, some sponsored by major media outlets and wealthy enthusiasts, scouring the high passes for hair samples, droppings, or a glimpse of the creature itself. Alleged relics emerged, most notably a purported Yeti scalp kept as a sacred object at the Kumjung Monastery in Nepal, and a hand said to be preserved in another. When scientists were finally permitted to examine these artifacts in the 1960s, the results were definitive but disappointing. The scalp was made from the skin and hair of a serow, a Himalayan goat antelope, and the hand was a human artifact, likely from a Buddhist ritual. Later genetic analyses of other claimed Yeti hair samples collected from across the region have consistently pointed to known animals, primarily the Himalayan brown bear, the Tibetan blue bear, and even horses or cows. So, if the physical evidence consistently dissolves under scrutiny, why does the legend persist with such tenacity? The answer lies in the powerful intersection of landscape and perception. The Himalayas are a place of extreme scale and profound isolation. The thin air, the blinding whiteouts, and the sheer, disorienting vastness can play tricks on the mind. A standing bear, glimpsed from a distance through blowing snow, can appear bipedal and strangely humanoid. Fallen rocks or sun-cupped snow formations can, with a trick of the light and a dose of expectation, look like purposeful footprints. The Yeti serves as a perfect explanation for the unknown sounds in the night, the strange markings on a trail, or the feeling of being watched in an empty valley. It gives a tangible shape to the immense, impersonal power of the mountains. Furthermore, for the Sherpa, the continued belief is not about a lack of scientific understanding, but about a different kind of knowledge, one rooted in cultural identity and environmental wisdom. The Yeti story enforces respect for the high, remote places, cautioning against arrogance and reminding people that they are visitors in a powerful, ancient world. The scientific expeditions may have failed to find a new primate, but in doing so, they inadvertently confirmed something else: the human need for mystery, for a blank space on the map where something wondrous and undiscovered might still exist, watching silently from the snow. Scotland's deep, dark loch holds a mystery that has captivated the world for nearly a century. Loch Ness is a place of profound and eerie geography, a long, narrow gash in the Scottish Highlands filled with water so peat-stained it appears black. It is deeper than the North Sea, with plunging trenches that have never seen sunlight, a cold, silent world perfect for hiding secrets. The modern legend of its monster, affectionately called Nessie, began in earnest in 1933, when a new road was built along the loch's western shore, opening up clear views of the water for the first time. That same year, a couple reported seeing an enormous creature, like a dragon or prehistoric animal, crossing the road and sliding into the loch. The story was picked up by the Inverness Courier, whose editor used the term monster, and a media sensation was born. Later that year, the most famous image of all was taken, the so-called surgeon's photograph, which appeared to show a long neck and small head rising from the water's surface. This single picture, published in the Daily Mail, cemented the image of Nessie as a living plesiosaur, a marine reptile from the age of dinosaurs that had somehow survived in the loch's icy depths. It was a perfect, thrilling narrative for the 20th century, but the legend's roots go far deeper, all the way back to the 6th century. The earliest written account comes from the life of Saint Columba, the Irish monk who brought Christianity to Scotland. The story tells of the saint encountering a group of Picts burying a man by the river Ness who had been mauled by a water beast. When Columba's own follower was attacked while swimming, the saint made the sign of the cross and commanded the creature to flee, which it did. This ancient tale frames the monster not as a curiosity, but as a dangerous spirit of the pagan waters conquered by the new faith. Over the decades, descriptions of Nessie have varied wildly. While the plesios or image is most iconic, many eyewitnesses describe something more like a giant hump or series of humps moving through the water like the back of a massive whale. Others report seeing a long, serpentine neck or a creature resembling a giant eel or sturgeon. This inconsistency is one of the puzzle's most frustrating aspects. The hunt for proof has been relentless and technologically sophisticated. Sonar sweeps have recorded large, unidentified moving objects deep in the loch, including a famous 1972 expedition that detected a large, animate mass following their boat. Underwater photographs have captured ambiguous shapes like the flipper-like object from 1975, yet every promising lead has crumbled. The surgeon's photograph was revealed decades later to be an elaborate hoax involving a toy submarine and a sculpted head. Many other photos have been debunked as floating logs, boat wakes, or swimming deer. Scientific surveys, including a major DNA study in 2019 that sampled the loch's water for genetic material, found no evidence of large unknown reptiles or fish, only countless eels. The simplest explanation is that Nessie is a cultural phenomenon, a mosaic of misidentified wildlife, floating debris, optical illusions on the choppy water, and pure, hopeful imagination, all projected onto a landscape that feels inherently mysterious. But the loch refuses to give a final answer. Its sheer size and murkiness mean we cannot explore every inch, and the occasional unexplained sonar ping or sincere eyewitness account keeps the door of possibility slightly ajar. Nessie has become something more than a potential animal. She is the queen of cryptids, a perpetual icon that fuels a vibrant tourism industry and speaks to our enduring love for a mystery that sits patient and dark in the deepest water. A different kind of shadow fell over a small American town, one that seemed to herald not mystery but disaster. In the chilly autumn of 1966, the quiet community of Point Pleasant, West Virginia, became the epicenter of a chilling modern legend. It began with two young couples driving near an abandoned World War II munitions site known as the TNT area. Their headlights caught a staggering figure, a man-shaped being, but one standing over 6 feet tall with broad, folded wings and two piercing, red eyes that seemed to glow from its upper body. As they sped away in terror, they claimed the creature unfolded its wings and took to the air, following their car with impossible speed, keeping pace with them at nearly 100 miles per hour before vanishing. This was the first of over 100 reported sightings that would flood the county over the next 13 months. Witnesses described a creature of silent, ominous power, a gray or brown figure that sometimes emitted a high-pitched squeaking sound and whose eyes were consistently noted as its most terrifying feature. The local press, searching for a name, dubbed it the Mothman. The phenomenon quickly spiraled beyond a single creature. Reports of strange lights in the sky or unidentified flying objects became common. Even more unsettling were accounts of mysterious visitors, men in dark suits driving black cars with unusual license plates, who would appear at witnesses' homes to question them, only to vanish without a trace. These men in black figures, a staple of UFO lore, seemed to tie the Mothman to a larger, more sinister pattern of otherworldly activity, suggesting a cover-up or an omen no one could fully understand. Then, on December 15, 1967, at the peak of evening rush hour, the unthinkable happened. The Silver Bridge, a vital connection over the Ohio River, shuddered and collapsed into the icy water, taking 46 cars and trucks with it. 46 people lost their lives in the tragedy. In the shocked aftermath, a grim connection was made. The Mothman sightings had ceased almost immediately after the bridge fell. To many, this was no coincidence. The creature was reinterpreted not as a random monster, but as a harbinger, a spectral warning of the catastrophe to come. Author John Keel would later popularize this theory in his book, weaving the sightings, UFOs, and the bridge collapse into a single, terrifying narrative of paranormal prophecy. So what did people actually see? Skeptics point to a far more earthly candidate, the sandhill crane. This is a large, majestic bird with a wingspan that can exceed 6 feet. When startled, it can run on long legs before taking flight, and its red forehead patch can, in poor light, be mistaken for glowing eyes. A sandhill crane, seen fleetingly at dusk by a frightened driver, could easily transform into a winged humanoid in the mind's eye. Psychologists also point to the power of suggestion and mass hysteria. Once the first story hit the newspaper, it primed an entire community to interpret any unusual sight, from an owl to a fog-shrouded deer, through the lens of the new legend. The collective anxiety created its own reality. Yet, the Mothman endures because it taps into a profound and ancient archetype, the omen of doom. From the banshee's wail in Celtic lore to the black dog of English legend, cultures have stories of spirits that appear before a death or disaster. The Mothman is this archetype dressed in the imagery of the modern age, complete with UFOs and government agents. It gives a tangible, winged form to the inarticulate dread we feel when a structure groans or the future feels unstable. The creature offered, in retrospect, a reason for the unexplainable tragedy, a sign that someone or something was trying to warn them. In the end, the legend of the Mothman is less about a monster and more about the human need to find pattern and meaning in the shadow that falls just before the world collapses. While a winged omen warns of physical collapse, a more intimate danger was believed to visit the vulnerable privacy of the bedroom. In the hushed, superstitious nights of medieval Europe, people feared entities that crossed the boundary of dreams to attack the soul itself, the succubus and the incubus. These were not mere ghosts but sexual demons, predators of the sleeping mind. The succubus took the form of a breathtakingly beautiful woman, appearing in the dreams of men to seduce them. Her male counterpart, the incubus, visited sleeping women as a handsome, often oppressive lover. Their goal was not simple pleasure, but a sinister theft. Through the act of dream intercourse, they were said to drain the vital life force or spiritus of their victim, leaving them physically weakened, spiritually defiled, and in a state of deep melancholy upon waking. Even more terrifying was the belief that these unions could result in pregnancy, with a demon fathering or mothering a child that would be born human but carry a taint of the demonic, explaining births where paternity was uncertain or the child exhibited strange, unsettling traits. These chilling tales served a very specific diagnostic purpose in a world without modern medicine or psychology. The experience we now call sleep paralysis provides a perfect physiological basis for the legend. In this state, the mind wakes while the body remains in the muscle atonia of REM sleep, leaving the person completely paralyzed, often while experiencing a crushing pressure on the chest and intense hallucinations of a menacing presence in the room. For a medieval person, this terrifying, immobile sensation, coupled with a shadowy figure at the bedside, was not a neurological glitch. It was a literal demon sitting on their chest, holding them down. Similarly, night terrors, erotic dreams, and even unexplained pregnancies or mysterious illnesses could all be neatly attributed to the visit of an incubus or succubus, providing both an explanation and a target for religious rites of purification. The roots of these demons stretch back far earlier than the Middle Ages. One powerful precursor is the figure of Lilith from Jewish folklore. According to some texts, Lilith was Adam's first wife, created as his equal, who refused to be subservient and fled Eden. She was then transformed into a demon who preyed on newborn children and, significantly, seduced sleeping men to spawn demonic offspring, a clear blueprint for the later succubus. This connection shows how ancient fears of female independence and sexual power were channeled into monstrous form. Within the medieval church, these stories became potent tools for moral instruction. They framed sexual desire outside of marriage, even within dreams, as a dangerous opening for spiritual corruption, a way for the devil to infiltrate the human soul through its weakest point. The body itself became a battleground, and every unexplained nocturnal emission or troubling dream could be seen as evidence of a demonic assault. This legacy of forbidden desire and spiritual danger never truly faded, it simply evolved. In the Romantic era, the succubus transformed into a tragic, alluring figure in literature, a symbol of destructive passion. In modern popular culture, from horror films to fantasy novels and video games, incubi and succubi are often recast as charismatic anti-heroes or seductive villains, retaining their connection to taboo sexuality and the peril of losing oneself to overwhelming temptation. They remind us that some of our oldest monsters are not found in forests or lakes, but within the shadowy landscape of our own subconscious, born from the primal fear of losing control, body and soul, in the vulnerable dark. Deep within the Scandinavian wilderness, the very rocks and trees seem to hold a slow, patient consciousness. Trolls were the ancient, brutish soul of the untamed north, beings as much a part of the landscape as the mountains they inhabited. In Norse mythology, their origins were primordial, descending from the first giants, the Jotun, who existed before the gods and represented the chaotic, raw forces of nature itself. These were colossal entities like the frost giants, enemies of the Aesir gods, whose very presence threatened the cosmic order of Asgard. Over centuries, as these epic myths filtered down into local folklore, the trolls became more localized but no less fearsome. They were described as massive, hulking creatures, often grotesquely ugly, with long noses, mossy skin, and tails. They lived in remote mountain caves, under great moss-covered boulders, or beneath bridges they had built themselves, and their strength was legendary, capable of crushing stone and uprooting ancient trees with their bare hands. Yet for all their power, trolls possessed a critical, defining weakness, a fatal allergy to sunlight. If caught outside when the sun rose, its rays would turn the creature instantly to stone. This is why so many Scandinavian landscapes are dotted with strangely shaped rock formations, which folklore explains as trolls who stayed out too long, permanently frozen in their last moment of flight. This vulnerability forced them into a nocturnal existence, hiding in the dark earth, and it created a perfect narrative device, a built-in timer for any human who found themselves in a troll's clutches. They simply had to survive until dawn. Their desires were as simple as their minds. They craved raw meat, particularly from livestock, or, in the darker tales, from humans themselves. They were also curiously fond of riddles and contests, a trait that clever heroes would often exploit. This love for puzzles highlights a key contradiction within the trollish nature: immense physical power paired with a profound, almost childlike lack of cunning. This made them perfect foils in countless fairy tales, where a quick-witted farmer's son or a brave young maiden could outsmart the monster, not with a sword but with a clever trick. A classic story tells of three billy goats who need to cross a bridge guarded by a hungry troll. The smallest goat goes first and tells the troll to wait for his bigger brother, who would make a more satisfying meal. The second goat does the same, promising his even larger sibling. When the huge third goat finally tromps across, his size and strength are enough to defeat the troll, sending him tumbling into the ravine. The tale is a masterclass in using a monster's own greed and lack of foresight against it. Not all trolls were mountain-sized behemoths. Folklore also spoke of smaller forest trolls, more mischievous than outright murderous. These beings might lead travelers astray, steal food from a camp, or play pranks on lonely woodcutters. they were still dangerous, still representatives of the wilderness's unpredictable spirit, but on a more manageable domestic scale. Whether giant or small, the trolls served a crucial cultural function. In a world where the dark forests and imposing mountains were very real dangers, the troll gave that danger a face and a set of rules. It explained the strange noises in the night, the disappearance of a sheep, or the sudden collapse of a trail. More importantly, the stories where humans outsmarted trolls reinforced a vital belief that human intelligence and courage could triumph over the mindless, overwhelming force of the wild. The troll was a problem that could be solved with wit, a reminder that the greatest strength does not always belong to the biggest creature in the room. The troll's simple greed could be outwitted, but some giants served a far more deliberate and terrifying form of justice. Across the world, cultures created their ultimate brutes, monsters designed not just to frighten, but to define the very line between good and evil. In the dark forests of European fairy tales, the ogre stood as a childhood nightmare given form. This was a creature of immense size and staggering ugliness, a lumbering humanoid with a taste for human flesh. Often living in a remote, crumbling castle or a cave deep in an enchanted wood, the ogre was a symbol of isolation and unchecked cruelty. Its intelligence was famously low, a dull-witted beast driven by base hunger and rage, making it a perfect obstacle for clever heroes like Jack of the Beanstalk fame or the cunning Puss in Boots. These stories often followed a satisfying pattern. The ogre would capture the protagonist, often with the intent to eat them, but the hero would use trickery, such as pretending to be someone else or challenging the ogre to a futile task, to escape and usually bring about the giant's own destruction. The ogre was a straightforward manifestation of physical threat, a monster that represented the wild dangers waiting beyond the safety of the village, and its defeat was a celebration of human cleverness over brute, stupid force. Travel to the islands of Japan and you find a demon of far more cosmic significance. The Oni is not merely a giant, it is a demon of hell, a being of pure, punitive evil. Often depicted with wild hair, sharp claws, and skin of vibrant red or ominous blue, their most distinctive features are the two sharp horns protruding from their foreheads and the massive iron club, or kanabo, they carry. Unlike the solitary ogre, Oni frequently appear in groups, serving as the brutal enforcers in the Buddhist hell realm, Jigoku, where they torment the souls of the wicked. But they are not confined to the afterlife. They can also invade the human world, bringing disaster, disease, and misfortune. They are the punishers of evil deeds, the karmic backlash made flesh, attacking those who have committed grave sins or broken serious social taboos. In many folktales, however, the Oni is not just a mindless torturer. It can be outsmarted or even, on rare occasions, reformed. The famous story of Momotaro, the Peach Boy, sees the young hero recruiting animal allies to journey to Oni Island and defeat a band of these demons, stealing back the treasure they had plundered from villages. This casts the Oni as violent thieves and invaders, a societal threat that requires communal bravery to overcome. Placed side by side, the ogre and the Oni reveal a shared purpose beneath their different cultural skins. Both are colossal embodiments of evil, designed to terrify listeners into proper behavior. The ogre teaches lessons about resourcefulness and courage in the face of overwhelming but simple-minded danger. It is a personal test for a fairy tale hero. The Oni, however, operates on a moral and cosmic scale. Its presence reinforces a spiritual worldview, teaching that wicked actions have severe consequences, either in this life or the next. It serves as a reminder of a universal order where evil is actively punished by monstrous, horned agents. One monster represents a physical trial of wit, the other a spiritual trial of character. Both, however, stand as the formidable, terrifying antagonists in stories crafted to make the victory of the hero or the triumph of the virtuous community all the more satisfying and meaningful. They are the darkness that makes the light of the moral lesson shine brighter. The terrifying giants of folklore enforce moral laws, but some monsters are born from the land itself, a voice for the wilderness. In the vast, ancient expanse of Australia, the outback holds a secret that has whispered from its waterways for thousands of years. Aboriginal Australian mythology speaks of the bunyip, a creature as varied and elusive as the continent's own harsh, beautiful landscape. Unlike a dragon or an ogre with a fixed form, the bunyip is a shapeshifter of legend, its description changing from region to region, from tribe to tribe. Some accounts paint it as a beast with a dog-like face, dark shaggy fur, and powerful flippers. Others describe a more reptilian horror with a crocodile's tail, the tusks of a walrus, or even sharp horns atop its head. This inconsistency is central to its mystery, suggesting the bunyip is less a single animal and more an embodiment of all the unknown dangers lurking in the water's edge. Its very name, in many Aboriginal languages, translates simply to devil or spirit, a name for the thing that should not be. The primary evidence of its presence was not a sighting, but a sound, a terrifying, booming cry or a deep, mournful bellow that echoed across still billabongs and riverbanks in the dead of night, a sound that would make any traveler's blood run cold. So what could have inspired such a pervasive and chilling legend? One compelling theory points deep into the prehistoric past. For millennia, Aboriginal peoples lived alongside and eventually witnessed the extinction of Australia's unique megafauna. Enormous animals like the diprotodon, a wombat-like creature the size of a rhinoceros, or the massive megalania, a monitor lizard larger than a crocodile, once roamed the land. The fossils and skeletal remains of these creatures, eroding from creek banks or discovered in waterholes, would have been tangible proof of monstrous life. A decaying diprotodon skull, with its large nasal cavities that might resemble a single giant eye socket, could easily seed stories of a one-eyed water demon. The legend may be a cultural memory, a story passed down for generations that preserves the truth that truly gigantic, strange creatures once shared this land. Beyond fossils, the bunyip served a vital, practical role as a cautionary tale. The Australian wilderness is unforgiving, and its waterways are home to very real and present dangers, from lurking crocodiles in the north to sudden flash floods, strong currents, and hidden drop-offs in seemingly placid waterholes. The story of the bunyip, the spirit that cries out before it drags the unwary under, was a powerful tool for parents. It taught children to respect the water, to stay away from the edge after dark, and to understand that the beautiful billabong could also be a place of death. The bunyip, therefore, is a masterful fusion of ecology, memory, and education. It is a possible echo of lost giants, a personification of very real environmental hazards, and a timeless story used to protect the next generation. It reminds us that some of the most enduring monsters are not just fears, but teachers, their strange forms and haunting calls carrying the distilled wisdom of survival in a world that is both magnificent and perilous. A monster's cry can teach respect for dangerous waters, but other creatures from myth offer a vision of perfect peace and cosmic order. The qilin, sometimes called the Chinese unicorn, is a being of pure benevolence. Unlike the fierce dragons of the same tradition, the qilin is a gentle, hooved creature, a magnificent chimera with the body of a deer often covered in scales, the tail of an ox, and the dignified, antlered head of a dragon. Its every feature symbolizes harmony. It walks so softly its hooves make no sound, and it is said to be so pure that it does not tread upon living grass, nor would it harm the smallest insect. This was not a creature of battle, but a celestial omen of supreme good fortune. Its rare appearance was believed to herald the birth or reign of a truly wise and just ruler, like the legendary Yellow Emperor, or the arrival of a great sage like Confucius. Spotting a qilin was an event of profound joy, signaling an era of peace, prosperity, and enlightened leadership. It represented the ideal state of the world, where virtue and serenity were made manifest in a living, breathing form. If the qilin symbolizes the pinnacle of harmonious rule, another being provides the very stage upon which that rule unfolds. Across multiple, disconnected cultures, a shared and astonishing idea emerges that the entire world rests on the back of an unfathomably large turtle. In Hindu cosmology, the earth is supported by 4 elephants, who themselves stand upon the shell of a giant turtle named chupacabra swimming through the cosmic ocean. Certain indigenous American traditions, like that of the Lenape and Iroquois peoples, tell of a great turtle that rose from the primal waters, its back accumulating mud to become the landmass of North America, often called Turtle Island. Chinese mythology also speaks of a cosmic turtle, Ao, whose legs were used by the goddess Nuwa to prop up the sky after it was damaged. This recurring mytheme is one of humanity's most profound metaphors for stability. The turtle, an animal renowned for its longevity, patience, and sturdy shell, becomes the perfect symbol for a solid, enduring foundation. The world is not floating in a void, it is carried, it is supported by a living entity of immense patience and strength. This idea moves beyond simple creation myth into deep philosophy, addressing the anxiety of what lies beneath us. It answers the childlike question of what holds the earth up, not with science, but with a story of incredible, reliable guardianship. The turtle does not act, it simply is a permanent, patient anchor in the cosmos. Together, the qilin and the world turtle represent 2 sides of a cosmic ideal. The qilin is the active principle of benevolent order, the sign that the world is being governed with virtue and grace. The world turtle is the passive principle of existential stability, the assurance that the world itself has a firm, lasting foundation. One is the beautiful event within the world, the other is the silent, enduring support of the world. They are creatures that answer our deepest yearnings, not for fear, but for assurance, for the promise that the universe is built on something solid and can, in its finest hours, be guided by something profoundly good. While the world turtle offers a vision of eternal stability, another creature represents the ultimate violation of that final rest. The vampire, as we know it today, is a sleek icon of Gothic romance, but its origins are buried in the damp, superstitious soil of Slavic and Balkan villages. Here, the monster was not a count in a castle, but a neighbor in the churchyard. The original vampire had many names, Eupia in Slavic regions, Varikolokas in Greece, but its core form was consistent and horrifyingly visceral. This was not a pale, elegant aristocrat, but a bloated, ruddy-faced corpse returned from the grave. Its skin was dark and taut from the gases of decomposition, and its mouth and nose were often caked with fresh blood, evidence of its nightly feasts. Unlike the solitary Dracula, this folkloric vampire preyed first and foremost on its own family and livestock, draining their life force slowly and spreading a wasting sickness through the household. It was a deeply intimate terror, a betrayal from beyond the grave that turned the familiar into the fatal. The methods to prevent or destroy such a creature were born of peasant ingenuity and symbolic logic. Garlic, with its pungent smell, was strewn around windows and doors or placed in the corpse's mouth, its purity repelling corruption. Poppy seeds or millet might be scattered at a crossroads or around a grave. The vampire was believed to be obsessive-compulsive, forced to count every single seed before moving on, a task that would occupy it until sunrise. To stop a vampire from rising, the body might be buried face down, or with a sickle around its neck so it would decapitate itself if it tried to sit up. But if the vampire was already active, more permanent solutions were required. The classic stake was not driven through the heart for dramatic effect, but to pin the body to the earth, preventing it from wandering. It was often made of ash or hawthorn, woods with their own protective folklore. Decapitation was common, with the head placed between the feet or burned. In some traditions, the entire body was dismembered and burned, the ashes scattered in running water. These rituals were less about killing and more about imposing a final, unmovable order on a body that had refused to stay dead. The vampire's transformation from a bloated peasant corpse to a global icon began in the drawing rooms of the Romantic era. John Polidori's 1819 story, The Vampire, was pivotal. Inspired by the charismatic Lord Byron, Polidori created Lord Ruthven, a suave, seductive nobleman who preyed on high society. This relocated the monster from the rural graveyard to the cosmopolitan city, making it a predator in silk and fine manners. But it was Bram Stoker's 1897 novel, Dracula, that cemented the modern archetype. Stoker fused folkloric elements with a fearsome, aristocratic villain, Count Dracula, a creature of ancient lineage, immense wealth, and chilling intelligence. He was not a mindless revenant, but a strategic invader, symbolizing Victorian fears of racial impurity, sexual inversion, and the corrupting influence of the ancient East on modern Britain. The novel's epistolary format made the horror feel immediate and real, and its success launched the vampire into the bloodstream of popular culture. From there, the vampire evolved relentlessly. 20th century film, from Max Schreck's rodent-like Count Orlok in Nosferatu to Bela Lugosi's hypnotic, theatrical Dracula, gave the monster a face. Later interpretations added layers of tragic romance and internal conflict, culminating in figures like Anne Rice's Lestat, a vampire who grappled with his own immortality and morality. Today, the vampire is a versatile symbol, appearing as brooding romantic hero, teen heartthrob, or action anti-hero. It's a metaphor for everything from addiction to forbidden desire. So why does this particular monster have such an immortal appeal? Its power lies in its layered violations. It taps into the primal fear of disease and contagion, spreading its condition like a plague. It embodies the terror of death that is not an end, but a corrupted, hungry continuation. Most potently, it intertwines with taboos of sexuality and predation. Its bite often a violent yet intimate act, blending pleasure with pain, life with death. The vampire is the ultimate outsider who wishes to come in, the beloved who becomes the predator, the past that refuses to die. It gives form to our deepest anxieties about the things we crave that might also destroy us, ensuring its story will never rest in peace. The vampire preys from without, but the most terrifying monster might be the one we carry inside ourselves. The werewolf legend is a story of transformation so primal it appears in nearly every corner of the globe, from the skinwalkers of Native American lore to the fearsome Ulfhednar of Norse sagas. This is the myth of the lycanthrope, the human who becomes a wolf, and its roots tap into our deepest anxieties about identity and control. Long before the full moon became its trigger, the idea of humans shifting into animal form was woven into the fabric of ancient belief. Across Europe, witches were said to anoint themselves with magical salves to take the shape of wolves or cats, slipping out at night to run with wild packs. In Scandinavia, the legendary berserkers, warriors of Odin, were described as entering a trance-like fury in battle, a state called berserkergang where they howled, gnawed their shields, and seemed to possess the strength and ferocity of bears or wolves, feeling no pain from wounds. These were not literal transformations, but they spoke to a cultural understanding that the boundary between human and beast was frighteningly thin, and that under certain extremes of rage, magic, or ritual, that boundary could dissolve. This simmering fear crystallized into literal horror during the witch trial frenzy of medieval and early modern Europe. The werewolf became a specific and deadly accusation. In countless trials, individuals, often poor and isolated peasants, were charged with making pacts with the devil to gain the power to transform. Testimonies described them using enchanted wolf pelts or demonic ointments, then terrorizing the countryside, slaughtering livestock, and even attacking villagers. The trials in places like 16th century France and Germany were as detailed and tragic as those for witchcraft. One famous case, that of Peter Stump in Germany in 1589, ended with his brutal execution after he confessed under torture to being a werewolf who had murdered and cannibalized victims for over 25 years. His story, likely the product of a diseased mind and a terrified community, shows how the legend provided a framework to explain serial violence and rural terror, channeling it into a narrative of diabolical possession that the courts could understand and brutally punish. Modern medicine offers potential explanations for these dark chapters. The rare psychiatric condition known as clinical lycanthropy involves a delusion in which a person believes they can transform into, or have transformed into, an animal, most commonly a wolf. Sufferers may behave in bestial ways, howling, crawling, and feeling their body change in ways that are terrifyingly real to them. Furthermore, the symptoms of rabies, a disease transmitted through animal bites, present a chilling parallel to the classic werewolf. Rabies can cause hyperaggression, frothing at the mouth, aversion to water, and biting behavior, all of which could easily be interpreted by a pre-scientific society as a person turning into the beast that bit them. A villager bitten by a rabid wolf who later exhibited these symptoms would seem to be living proof of the curse of lycanthropy, a medical tragedy mistaken for a supernatural one. But the werewolf's enduring power lies far beyond misdiagnosed disease. It is one of our most potent metaphors. The transformation under the full moon symbolizes the loss of rational control, the unleashing of the primal, violent instincts that civilization works so hard to suppress. It is the beast within, the fear that our polite, social selves are only a thin veneer over a wild and hungry core. The werewolf story asks what happens when the rules fall away, when the night is dark and the inner chains break. It embodies our terror of our own potential for savagery, and the haunting suspicion that the wildness we fear in the forest is, in truth, a reflection of the wildness sleeping in our own blood. This monster does not come from a distant castle or a deep loch. It is us, or what we fear we could become. The werewolf fears the beast within, but another monster embodies the total loss of self, a fate worse than death. The zombie's journey from a quiet, spiritual terror to a global symbol of apocalypse reveals two very different nightmares. The original zombie is not a flesh-eating ghoul, but a profound tragedy of Haitian Vodou belief. Here, a zombie is not a corpse, but a living person whose soul has been stolen by a sorcerer, a boka. Through magical powders or rituals, the boka captures the tai bon ange, the part of the soul responsible for personality and free will. What remains is an empty shell, a body without memory, drive, or identity. This person is not dead, but they are no longer truly alive. They become a mindless puppet, often forced into a life of endless, brutal labor on remote plantations or in the boka's service. This zombie is a chilling metaphor with roots in Haiti's painful history. Emerging from a society built on the horrors of the transatlantic slave trade, the zombie myth gave form to the ultimate fear of the enslaved population, to lose not just your freedom, but your very self, your soul, condemned to an eternity of soulless toil. It was a spiritual warning about the consequences of dark magic and social betrayal, a story where the greatest punishment was to become a slave forever, even after death. This quiet, psychological horror stood in stark contrast for decades. Then, the monster was reborn in a new, virulent image. The modern zombie was crystallized by filmmaker George Romero in his 1968 classic, Night of the Living Dead. Romero's creatures were reanimated corpses, but they were not under a sorcerer's spell. They were driven by a single, mindless imperative, a ravenous hunger for human flesh. Their bite or scratch spread the condition, turning victims into more of the shambling horde. This was not a personal curse, but a pandemic. Romero used his zombies as a blank slate for social commentary, holding up a mirror to a society collapsing under its own prejudices, consumerism, and paranoia during the chaos. Later iterations, especially from the late 20th century onward, often explained the outbreak with a scientific veneer, a runaway virus, a mutated pathogen, or a failed bioweapon. This version transformed the zombie from an individual tragedy into a collective, civilization-ending event. Despite their vastly different origins, both zombies tap into parallel, profound human fears. The Haitian zombie speaks to the terror of losing autonomy and identity, of becoming a tool for another's will. It is a fear of spiritual theft and eternal bondage. The modern zombie horde, in contrast, reflects our anxieties about mindless conformity, the rapid spread of disease in a globalized world, and the fragile veneer of civilization. It asks what happens when society's rules vanish and we are reduced to our most basic predatory instincts, or become mere numbers in an overwhelming, hungry crowd. One monster is about the loss of the inner self, the other about the collapse of the outer world. Together, they bookend our dread, from the silent theft of a single soul to the roaring, endless hunger of the faceless mob. The loss of a soul is a quiet, personal horror, but the corruption of one's own sacred knowledge can unleash a monster that walks among the community. Within the spiritual traditions of the Navajo or Dene people, there exists a concept so serious and so powerful that it is rarely spoken of openly, a being known as the Yi-Noldlushii. This term translates roughly to "with it, he goes on all fours," and it refers to a person who has chosen to use sacred rituals and knowledge for profound evil. A skinwalker is not a mythical creature in the sense of a dragon or a ghost. It is a human witch or sorcerer who has gained the malevolent ability to transform into, possess, or disguise themselves as an animal, most often a coyote, wolf, owl, or crow. To achieve this power, they must commit the most grievous violations of Navajo taboos, acts that are unthinkable within a culture built on principles of balance and respect. The very existence of this belief is not a campfire tale, but a cornerstone of a serious spiritual worldview, underscoring the immense responsibility that comes with traditional knowledge. In Navajo philosophy, the central concept is hajo, a state of beauty, harmony, and order that exists in relationships between people, the natural world, and the spiritual realm. Everything in life is a movement toward restoring or maintaining this balance. Healing ceremonies, prayers, and daily practices are all designed to promote hajo. The skinwalker represents the absolute inversion of this ideal. By committing intentional harm, especially against their own kin, and by perverting rituals meant for healing, they create hochkso, a state of disorder, ugliness, and disharmony. Their transformation into an animal is not a gift but a marker of this deep corruption, a sign they have stepped outside the natural order of things. For this reason, discussing skinwalkers in detail, repeating stories, or even saying the name aloud is considered deeply disrespectful and potentially dangerous within traditional Navajo culture. It is believed that such talk can attract the attention of the very forces one speaks of, or worse, inadvertently mimic the actions of a witch by spreading fear and disharmony. The focus, therefore, is not on the sensational mechanics of transformation, but on the profound cultural lessons the belief reinforces. It serves as the ultimate cautionary tale about the dual-edged nature of power. The same intricate knowledge of herbs, rituals, and the natural world that a medicine person uses to heal can, in the hands of someone who has turned away from hajo, be used to inflict sickness, misfortune, and death. The skinwalker myth enforces social cohesion by defining the outermost boundaries of acceptable behavior, making it clear that certain acts are so destructive they literally dehumanize the perpetrator. It also explains misfortune in a world where balance is paramount, when livestock sicken, when accidents happen, or when strange occurrences plague a family. The cause might be traced to a deliberate, hidden evil rather than random chance. This understanding leads to protective practices, the use of sacred corn pollen, specific prayers, and the guidance of a traditional diagnostician to restore balance and ward off harmful intentions. Ultimately, the concept of the Yi-Noldlushii is a solemn reminder that knowledge is not neutral, and that true power is always coupled with an ethical responsibility to the community and the cosmic order. It teaches that the most terrifying monsters are not born but made through a series of choices that sever a person from harmony, from their people, and from their own humanity. This idea that darkness is a corruption of light echoes in traditions worldwide, but here it is given one of its most potent and respected forms. The corruption of sacred knowledge warns of monsters we create, but what of beings created alongside us, sharing our world yet forever hidden from sight? Within Islamic tradition and the rich folklore of the Middle East, the jinn, or jinnis, are not mere wish-granting plot devices, but a complete race of sentient beings with a profound theological history. Their origin story is cosmic. They are described as beings created by God from a smokeless fire, a luminous, scorching energy that places them in a category entirely separate from humans, made from clay, and angels made from light. This fiery essence grants them abilities beyond our own, including shape-shifting, invisibility, and immense strength, but it does not make them omnipotent. Crucially, like humans, they were endowed with free will. This single fact is the key to understanding their true nature. Just as humanity contains saints and sinners, the jinn encompass a full spectrum of morality. Some are devoutly pious, following their own prophets and striving for righteousness. Others are malevolent and deceptive, causing mischief, possession, and illness. Many are simply neutral, living their lives in their own unseen societies, indifferent to humanity unless crossed. This complexity is rooted in scripture. The Quran has an entire chapter, Surah al-Jinn, dedicated to them, recounting how a group of jinn heard the Prophet Muhammad recite verses and embraced Islam. They are not fairy tale creatures, but a fundamental part of the cosmology, inhabitants of a parallel dimension that intersects with our own, often in deserted places, ruins, or during the liminal hours of dusk and dawn. It is from this deep well of belief that the more familiar folkloric tales spring. In collections like 1001 Nights, we meet jinn of immense power who are often bound to physical objects, like a lamp or a ring, as a punishment for defiance or as a result of powerful magic. The story of Aladdin is the most famous example, but even here, the jinn is a formidable personality, not a smiling servant. He obeys the holder of the lamp not out of goodwill, but because he is magically compelled, a prisoner seeking eventual release. This is a far cry from the simplified Western genie in a bottle trope, which often reduces these beings to a comic, blue-skinned wish-granter with a strict rule of three. In their authentic cultural context, jinn are a civilization. They marry, have children, form tribes and kingdoms, practice religions, and experience the full range of emotions, from love and loyalty to envy and rage. They can be befriended, outsmarted, or offended, and interactions with them are treated with seriousness and specific etiquette. To reduce them to a wish fulfillment mechanism is to miss the entire point. They are a mirror to humanity, a reflection of our own capacities for good and evil, living just beyond the corner of your eye, in the whisper of the wind and the flicker of a shadow. For as long as ships have sailed beyond the sight of land, sailors have whispered of a ruler in the boundless blue. The sea serpent is perhaps the most persistent of all maritime legends, a creature of staggering length and ancient lineage, reported in nearly every ocean by cultures separated by vast distances and centuries. These are not the island-sized krakens of the north, but something more sinuous and swift, a serpentine monarch gliding through the open deep. Typical accounts from ship logs and sailor testimonies describe an animal of almost impossible proportions, an enormously long, snake-like body, sometimes seen as a series of humps breaking the surface in a line, other times as a long, undulating neck and a small head lifted above the waves. Its color was often dark brown or blackish, and its movement was said to be swift and powerful, capable of keeping pace with a sailing vessel under full wind. These sightings were not confined to the superstitious Middle Ages. They persisted well into the age of steam and scientific exploration. One of the most famous and credible encounters occurred in August 1848, involving the Royal Navy ship HMS Daedalus, captained by Peter Mkwahi. While sailing off the coast of West Africa, the captain and several officers reported a large, serpentine creature passing within 200 yards of the ship. They observed it for nearly 20 minutes, describing it as at least 60 feet long, with a head held about 4 feet out of the water, resembling that of a snake. It moved, in Captain Mkwahi's words, with no perceptible motion of the body. The account was published in the Times of London, causing a sensation and sparking fierce debate among naturalists of the day, who could not reconcile the sighting with any known animal. So what were these experienced mariners seeing in the empty expanse? Modern marine biology offers several compelling candidates that could have seeded the legend. The most likely is the giant oarfish, a deep sea dweller that can grow over 36 feet long. This ribbon-thin, silvery fish has a red crest on its head and a habit of swimming near the surface when sick or dying, presenting a breathtaking and utterly alien spectacle to anyone who might spot its serpentine form. Another common misidentification involves the basking shark. When this large, plankton-eating shark dies and begins to decompose, its lower jaw and gill arches often rot away first, leaving the skull and backbone, which can eerily resemble the small head and long neck of a plesiosaur. A floating, half-rotten basking shark carcass seen from a rolling deck could easily be interpreted as the remains of a prehistoric sea monster. Other possibilities include the truly enormous giant squid, whose tentacles might be mistaken for a serpent's body, or even rare congregations of smaller animals like dolphins or whales swimming in a line, creating the illusion of a single, continuous creature. The legend of the sea serpent, however, transcends any single biological explanation. It represents something fundamental: humanity's primal fear and fascination with the vast, unexplored depths. The ocean is the last great wilderness on our planet, a realm where light fails and pressure crushes, home to life forms more bizarre than our wildest fiction. For centuries, the open sea was a place of profound vulnerability, where a ship was a tiny speck on an endless, unknowable abyss. To populate that abyss with a recognizable, if monstrous, ruler was a way to make it comprehensible. The sea serpent gave a shape to the deep's mysteries, a focal point for the awe and dread that comes from staring into miles of dark water, wondering what ancient and immense lives are moving, unseen, in the cold silence far below. The chimera was not merely another monster to be slain, it was a deliberate and terrifying impossibility. Ancient Greek poets like Homer described a creature of such jarring composition it seemed to defy the natural order itself: a lion's powerful body, a goat's head protruding grotesquely from its spine, and a living serpent forming its tail, with the added horror of being able to breathe gouts of searing fire. This was not a random assortment of parts, but a calculated affront to creation, a being that could not and should not exist. Its very name, chimera, came to mean a foolish fantasy, a thing of impossible hybrid nature. Its defeat required an equally impossible hero, Bellerophon, who with the aid of the winged horse Pegasus soared above the beast's fiery breath to strike it down, a myth that celebrated divine favor and human courage over chaotic, unnatural power. The chimera's symbolic meaning was clear. It was the embodiment of disorder, a walking catastrophe that represented the horrors of the unnatural, the volcanic, and the inexplicable. Yet, in a fascinating twist, the term chimera has expanded far beyond its Greek origins to describe the entire category of hybrid creatures that populate world mythology. Think of the majestic griffin combining the eagle and lion, or the wise sphinx merging human intellect with leonine strength. Even the humble kitsune, a fox with human-like intelligence and magical power, fits this broader definition. These are all chimeras in the conceptual sense, beings crafted from the fusion of distinct natural forms. This prevalence points to a fundamental human impulse in storytelling. Hybrid creatures are a powerful symbolic shorthand. By combining the attributes of two or more animals or blending animal and human traits, mythmakers could create a being that embodied a complex idea or a concentrated fear. The griffin wasn't just strong or just keen-sighted. It was the perfect fusion of the king of beasts and the king of birds, symbolizing total, vigilant sovereignty. The Egyptian sphinx was not just powerful or just wise. It was the literal incarnation of a pharaoh's duty to protect with the strength of a lion and rule with the intelligence of a man. These hybrids allowed ancient cultures to visualize abstract concepts like royalty, protection, or divine wrath in a single, memorable form. On a deeper psychological level, chimeras also represent the human mind grappling with the unknown. When faced with a terrifying but poorly understood natural force, what better way to comprehend it than to give it a composite form drawn from familiar yet dangerous animals? The roaring destruction of a landslide or wildfire might become a lion's roar. The unpredictable danger of a mountain pass might be given the cunning of a serpent, and the strange, isolated peaks themselves might be seen as the haunches of a great stone beast. The chimera is a cognitive tool, a way to assemble a recognizable monster from the disjointed pieces of a frightening world. Ultimately, whether as a symbol of unnatural chaos like the Greek chimera or as an emblem of combined virtues like the griffin, these hybrid beings show us that mythology is, at its heart, an act of creative synthesis. Our ancestors looked at the scattered wonders and terrors of their world, and in their stories fused them together into creatures that could explain the unexplainable, embody ideals, and give a memorable face to the formless fears that lurk just beyond the firelight. The chimera's unnatural form warns of a world out of balance, but a far more intimate corruption haunts the frozen forests of North America. Among the Algonquian-speaking peoples, a story is told of a spirit born from the deepest winter and the darkest corners of the human heart, the Wendigo. This is not merely a monster to be hunted, but a malevolent force that preys on desperation itself. In the legends, the Wendigo is a spirit of winter, famine, and insatiable greed. It can appear as a physical creature, a towering, emaciated giant, all skin stretched tight over bone, as pale as the driven snow. Its eyes burn with a feverish, yellowish light, and from its head sprout the antlers of a stag, a grotesque crown of the wilderness it embodies. Its lips are often described as tattered and bloody, forever gnawed away from its own endless hunger. Most terrifying of all, its heart is said to be made of solid ice, a perfect symbol for the utter absence of warmth, compassion, or humanity. Yet the Wendigo is not always an external beast. Its true danger lies in its power of possession. The most common way to become a Wendigo, according to the lore, is to resort to cannibalism, to consume human flesh in a time of extreme starvation. In the brutal grip of a long winter, when food stores vanish and hope freezes, this act of ultimate taboo is believed to open a person's soul to the spirit's invasion. The individual is then transformed, their own hunger magnified to a monstrous degree, their humanity stripped away until only a ravenous, frozen core remains. This transformation is the legend's central, devastating warning. It served as a powerful cultural taboo, a story so terrifying it reinforced the most sacred of social bonds even in the face of death. In an environment where survival was a daily collective effort, the story of the Wendigo taught that there were fates worse than starvation, that to lose your humanity was to become a perpetual predator of your own people. It was a spiritual safeguard, a narrative bulwark against the unthinkable choices demanded by extreme scarcity. Beyond the literal horror of cannibalism, the Wendigo evolved into a profound metaphor. It came to represent any kind of all-consuming greed or excess that destroys the individual and the community. The insatiable hunger for more, whether for wealth, power, or resources, is a spiritual winter that freezes the heart. In this sense, a person who hoards food while others starve, or who exploits their kin for personal gain, could be described as acting like a Wendigo, their humanity consumed by a cold, endless appetite. The legend is a masterful piece of psychological storytelling. It gives a tangible, terrifying form to the internal collapse that can occur under immense stress and deprivation. The gaunt body reflects the physical wasting of starvation, while the icy heart and endless hunger depict the emotional and moral emptiness that follows a profound betrayal of one's own nature. The Wendigo is the monster we fear we might become if pushed to the absolute limit, a walking embodiment of the loss of self-control and social responsibility. Even its antlers connect it to the wild, untamed forest, a sign that the person has fully reverted to a state beyond civilization, ruled only by a primal, destructive need. This story, born from the snow and the struggle for survival, resonates far beyond the pine woods. It asks a timeless question: what are we willing to sacrifice to stay alive, and at what point does the cost become our very soul? The Wendigo stands as a stark reminder that some hungers, once fed, can never be satisfied, and that the coldest monster may not be waiting in the woods but sleeping within us, waiting for a long, hungry winter to wake it. The Wendigo's hunger is born of endless winter, but another creature marks winter's end with a roar that demands a different kind of defiance. In the deep mountains of ancient Chinese legend, a beast named Nyan would emerge from its long hibernation as the cold season waned. This was not a random predator, but a creature of dreadful habit descending upon villages on the eve of the new year. Its appearance was a fusion of nightmares, often described as a massive, ferocious lion with the sharp, curling horns of an ox, eyes that blazed like lanterns, and a mouth large enough to swallow a person whole. It had a particular and terrifying taste for the village children and livestock, leaving communities in dread as the year turned, waiting for the monster's annual feast. For years, the people lived in fear, hiding in their homes or fleeing to the mountains when the Nyan came. But the legend tells of a turning point, born not from a warrior's sword, but from collective observation and courage. One year, as the beast approached, the villagers noticed something strange. A child playing outside a home was wearing a bright red coat. The Nyan, upon seeing the flash of crimson, recoiled and shied away, bypassing that house entirely. In another version of the tale, an old man staying in the village refused to flee. He pasted red paper on his doors and windows, set a fire to keep bright lights burning, and when the Nyan arrived, he began making a tremendous racket, beating drums and pots together. The beast, confronted with the shocking color, the blinding light, and the deafening noise, turned and fled back to the mountains, never to return that year. This discovery of the monster's three great fears, the color red, loud noises, and bright light, became the village's salvation. The knowledge spread, transforming a night of terror into a night of proactive celebration. To ensure the Nyan would not return, people began to decorate their homes with red paper scrolls and lanterns. They wore red clothing for protection. And most famously, they invented the precursor to modern firecrackers, burning bamboo segments in fires, which would explode with loud pops and cracks to scare the beast away. Over centuries, these practical acts of communal defense evolved into the vibrant traditions we know today. The Chinese New Year, or Spring Festival, is now a global celebration where red envelopes are exchanged for luck, dazzling fireworks light up the sky, and homes are adorned with crimson decorations. The story of the Nyan is a masterclass in how a culture can take a primal fear and, through ingenuity and unity, literally turn it into a festival. The monster was not slain by a single hero, but outsmarted by an entire community, its weakness becoming the foundation for a holiday that celebrates renewal, family, and the joyful noise of driving away the old shadows to welcome a new beginning. A world ruled by hunger and ice finds its counterpoint in a whisper of light among ancient leaves. After the consuming cold of the Wendigo, we find a spirit not of lack but of profound, quiet abundance. In the deep, misty forests of Japan, particularly those shrouding sacred mountains, the oldest trees are never truly alone. they are watched over and in a sense inhabited by the kodama. These are not monsters to be feared, but spirits to be revered, the gentle, sentient soul of a tree that has stood for centuries. To encounter a kodama is to witness the forest's own quiet consciousness. They are rarely seen directly, but their presence is felt and sometimes glimpsed as a soft, pale glow hovering between mossy trunks in the twilight, or as a faint, ethereal humanoid figure that vanishes when looked at directly. They are the forest's whisper, a sign that a place is old, alive, and sacred. The relationship between a kodama and its tree is absolute. The spirit does not merely live in the tree, it is the tree. This bond means that to harm the tree is to attack the spirit itself. Folklore holds that if a woodsman were to cut down a tree inhabited by a kodama, the act would not go unpunished. The spirit would not necessarily attack, but its distress would manifest as a curse. Misfortune would follow the cutter and his family, illness might strike, or their own home could collapse. In some tales, the kodama's vengeance is more direct. The spirit would haunt the lumber, causing the house built from it to groan and shake as if alive, tormenting the inhabitants until they abandoned it. This belief was not born from malice, but from a foundational worldview. The kodama is a perfect expression of Shinto, the indigenous spirituality of Japan. At the heart of Shinto is the concept of kami, a term that does not simply mean God in a Western sense, but signifies the sacred, spiritual essence that exists within all things. A waterfall, a striking rock, a mountain, and certainly an ancient towering tree. A kodama is the kami of a specific venerable tree. It represents the belief that nature is not a resource to be used, but a community of conscious beings to be respected. This deep-seated reverence is visible in the landscape. Walk through an old Japanese forest and you will often find a small Shinto shrine, a hokora, placed at the base of a particularly grand cedar or cypress. A sacred rope called a shimnoa, woven from rice straw, is tied around the massive trunk, marking it as the dwelling place of a kami and setting it apart from the ordinary world. These are not decorations, they are acts of communication and respect, a way for people to acknowledge, honor, and appease the spirit within, ensuring harmony between the human and natural realms. The tale of the kodama moves us from stories of conflict to stories of coexistence. It is a myth that promotes stewardship over conquest, listening over shouting. In a modern world often disconnected from nature, the kodama offers a gentle but powerful reminder. It asks us to consider the ancient lives that surround us, the trees that have witnessed centuries come and go. What stories could that old oak in your local park tell if it had a voice? The kodama suggests that perhaps it does have one, not in words, but in its silent, enduring presence, and that our role is not to dominate, but to listen, protect, and honor the living world of which we are only a part. Your reflection in the mirror is not always your own. The most unsettling monster may be the one wearing your face, walking with your gait, and living a life parallel to your own. This is the doppelganger, a word lifted directly from German meaning double walker. In its folkloric origins, this was not a harmless twin or a case of mistaken identity. The doppelganger was a wraith, a spectral duplicate of a living person, an omen of such dire portent that to encounter it was to receive a death sentence. Seeing your own double, especially if it was engaged in some activity you were not, meant that illness, catastrophe, or death was swiftly approaching for you or someone close. This double was often silent, a mute observer of your life, or worse, an active agent of misfortune, going out into the world and committing acts that would ruin your reputation while you were elsewhere, asleep in your bed. The terror was not of an external beast, but of the self-unraveling, of your very identity being hijacked and used against you. This folklore found a chilling echo in a moment of American history. President Abraham Lincoln reportedly recounted a strange dream to his wife and a few close aides just days before his assassination in April 1865. He dreamed he was wandering the White House, drawn by the sound of weeping, until he entered the East Room. There he found a corpse lying in state, guarded by soldiers. When Lincoln asked who had died, a soldier replied, "The president. He was killed by an assassin." Lincoln approached the catafalque and looked down upon his own face. He awoke deeply unsettled. Whether this was a genuine premonition, a story that grew in the telling after the tragedy, or simply the stress of a wartime leader manifesting in sleep, it cemented the doppelganger's reputation as a herald of personal doom. The power of this legend lies in its psychological plausibility. Modern medicine recognizes a rare but documented phenomenon called autoscopy, or the out-of-body experience, where a person perceives a visual image of themselves in their own environment. This is not folklore, but a neurological event. It has been linked to conditions like epilepsy, migraines, brain tumors, and strokes, particularly when they affect the junction of the temporal and parietal lobes, areas crucial for integrating sensory information and creating our sense of bodily self. For a patient, the experience is profoundly disorienting and often terrifying. They are literally confronted with a duplicate of themselves, a tangible proof that the brain's map of the body can glitch. In that moment of neurological misfire, the ancient fear of the doppelganger becomes a clinical reality. This monster, perhaps more than any other, drills into our deepest existential anxieties. It is not about something foreign invading us, but about the core concept of eye fracturing. The doppelganger represents the ultimate identity theft, where the thief is an exact replica with all your memories and rights. It taps into the fear of being replaced, of becoming obsolete in your own life, or of a hidden, malevolent version of yourself running free. It is the uncanny valley of the self, a copy so perfect it becomes a horror. In a world of digital avatars, deepfake videos, and data-driven personas, the ancient fear of the double has never felt more relevant. How can you prove you are the original when a perfect copy, digital or spectral, is walking the world in your name? The doppelganger asks the most unsettling question of all: what happens when the monster you must fear is simply you from a slightly different angle? The monster in the mirror is a fracture of the self, but our final tale is a monster of pure, desolate place. In the vast, sun-scorched silence of the Gobi Desert, Mongolian herders whisper of a creature so perfectly adapted to its harsh realm that it has become one with the sand itself. They call it the Olgoi Korkoi, the Mongolian deathworm. This is not a serpent of legend from a forgotten age, but a modern cryptid, a living mystery reported by nomadic people to this day. Descriptions are remarkably consistent across the remote regions of the Gobi. It is said to be a thick, sausage-like worm between 2 and 5 feet long, with a dark red or blood-colored body that allows it to blend into the rust-colored sands. It has no discernible eyes or head, just a mouth at one end, ringed with sharp, inward-pointing teeth. But its most terrifying features are not its bite, but its otherworldly means of attack. Local accounts insist the deathworm can spit a stream of corrosive, instantly fatal venom over a significant distance. Even more fantastically, it is said to generate a powerful electric shock, strong enough to kill a camel or a human from several feet away, simply by touching the sand near its burrow. It is a creature of ambush, lying buried just beneath the surface of the dunes, emerging only during the brief, hot months of summer, especially after a rare rain. The legend has drawn the curious and the brave from across the world, most notably cryptozoologists like the Czech investigator Ivan Makal, who mounted multiple expeditions into the Gobi throughout the 1980s and 90s. Makal and his teams employed various methods, from traditional interviews with herders to more unconventional tactics like using small explosives to send vibrations through the sand, hoping to flush the creature out. They collected compelling testimonies and even some strange, unidentifiable burrows, but no specimen, no photograph, and no definitive proof ever materialized. The deathworm remained and remains a story told in the shadow of a felt hat, a warning not to linger in certain parts of the shimmering heat. So what could explain such a specific and persistent legend? Biologists point to several plausible, if less dramatic, candidates. One strong contender is the Tartar sand boa, a heavy-bodied, reddish-brown snake that burrows in sandy soils. To a frightened herder seeing only a part of its thick body as it retreats into the earth, it could easily be mistaken for a giant, headless worm. Another fascinating possibility is a species of giant caterpillar, perhaps from the hawk moth family. Some large caterpillars can eject a defensive spray of irritating chemicals from a distance, and their segmented, legless bodies could be described as worm-like. A startled encounter with such an insect, its defensive spray stinging the eyes, could seed the story of a venom-spitting monster. The desert environment itself is the final, crucial ingredient. The Gobi is a place of extreme isolation, blinding light, and mirages. The sheer, empty silence plays tricks on the mind, amplifying small sounds and transforming familiar shapes into menacing forms. A strange animal encounter in such a landscape is filtered through awe and ancestral caution, growing in the retelling around a campfire into something mythic. The deathworm, then, is the perfect creature for its home. It embodies the lethal, hidden dangers of the desert, the fear of a ground that can suddenly become alive and deadly. It is a story born from respect for a land that gives no second chances. And with that, our journey through 30 unbelievable tales reaches its end. We have traveled from the treasure-hoarding dragons of Europe to the shape-shifting kitsune of Japan, from the soul-stealing zombies of Haiti to the electric worms of the Gobi. Each story, in its own way, is a mirror. These monsters reflect the landscapes that birthed them, the fears that haunted their people, and the profound human need to explain the unknown with a shape, a name, and a story. They teach us about the dangers of greed, the importance of community, the terror of losing control, and the sacredness of the natural world. They are not just relics of a superstitious past, but living narratives that continue to evolve because the mysteries they represent, of the deep sea, the distant stars, and the wilderness within our own hearts, are mysteries we still face today. So the next time you hear a strange sound in the night or feel a chill while walking alone, remember the long, incredible lineage of storytelling you are now a part of. The shadows still hold their shapes, and the world is still wonderfully, terrifyingly full of questions. Thank you for listening. From the desert's hidden sting to the forest's gentle whisper, these 30 tales have taken us across the entire map of human imagination. We have stood with heroes facing dragons of greed, shivered at the call of the bunyip in a moonlit billabong, and marveled at the celestial wisdom of the thunderbird. Each story a unique gem from a different culture and time, yet when we step back, a magnificent tapestry emerges, woven from threads common to us all. These monsters were never just about fear. They were humanity's first attempts at science, philosophy, and psychology. A strange bone became a dragon. The terror of sleep paralysis became an incubus. The unexplainable depth of a loch became a home for a prehistoric survivor. We personified the chaos of the sea as the kraken, the danger of the forest as the leshy, and the corruption of power as the wendigo. We populated every shadow, every mountain pass, and every churning wave with a form and a name, because a story is something we can understand, even when the world itself seems inexplicable. The real magic of these legends, then, may not lie in their physical truth. The enduring power is in the telling. For thousands of years, across flickering campfires and in hushed village squares, these stories have taught children respect for nature, warned communities of moral decay, and celebrated the triumph of cleverness over brute force. They gave shape to our collective anxieties about death, desire, and the wilderness, both outside our doors and within our own hearts. They are the shared dreams and nightmares of our species, a testament to our endless creativity in the face of the great unknown. So we leave you with this question: which of these 30 unbelievable tales resonates most deeply with you? Do you find the tragic curse of Medusa the most compelling, or the communal cunning that defeated the Naian? Is there a local legend from your own heritage that sends a chill down your spine? Share your favorite mythical monster in the comments below, and let us know which one you think might just have a kernel of truth hidden within its ancient lore. If you enjoyed this journey through the shadows of history, be sure to subscribe. We have many more deep dives into the world's greatest historical mysteries waiting for you. Thank you for